Imagine, right now, somewhere in the world, a man is taking a DNA test, and in a few days, science will tell him with near-perfect accuracy whether a child is biologically his. But for 300,000 years of human history, that answer simply did not exist. And what ancient humans did instead changed marriage, religion, jealousy, and entire civilizations. Here's the biological reality nobody talks about. A mother always knows her child is hers. She gestated it. She gave birth to it. The connection is direct and impossible to fake. A father never had that certainty. Not once. Not for 300,000 years. Evolutionary biologists call this paternity uncertainty, and it's one of the most consequential biological facts in all of human history. Think about why it even exists. In species like seahorses, the male physically carries the young. Paternity is impossible to doubt. But in mammals, including humans, fertilization happens invisibly inside the female body. There's a 9-month gap between the act and the baby. The male's contribution is completely unverifiable by direct observation. He was there at the relevant moment, or he wasn't. And in a world with no labs, no hospitals, no cheek swabs, there was zero way to know for certain. That asymmetry, mother's always certain, father's never certain, is the engine that drove ancient humans to build some of the strangest social systems in history. So what did early humans actually do? The honest answer is, they probably didn't think about it the way we do now. The specific understanding that one particular man's genetic material combined with one woman's to produce a child requires a level of biological knowledge that didn't exist for most of human prehistory. Several anthropologists have documented traditional societies where the connection between sex and reproduction was understood completely differently. The Trobriand Islanders of Papua New Guinea, famously studied by anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski, had no cultural concept of biological paternity at all. They believed children were the result of ancestral spirits entering the mother, with male sexual activity serving a social function rather than a biological one. And here's the thing, that's not as crazy as it sounds. Because what ancient hunter-gatherer societies did understand consistently was something called social paternity. The social father. The man the community recognized as responsible for a child, regardless of biology, was a near-universal feature of human societies. And social paternity was established through one thing above all else: proximity and relationship. The man who was in a recognized partnership with the mother at the time of the child's birth was, in virtually every culture ever studied, the social father of that child. Your brain is still running this exact algorithm today, automatically assigning paternity to the most contextually obvious person. It's a deep behavioral default, and it appears to be hardwired. But proximity wasn't the only tool. Humans also used resemblance. And the science here is genuinely fascinating. Studies across multiple cultures have shown that when people are shown photographs of children and asked to identify which potential father the child resembles, they perform significantly better than chance. But here's the really interesting part. Humans are better at detecting resemblance between fathers and children than between mothers and children. Even though mothers are definitely related to their children. Even though the resemblance should theoretically be equivalent. Why the asymmetry? The leading explanation is evolutionary pressure. Mother-child resemblance doesn't need to be verified. The mother was always present. Father-child resemblance is the uncertain relationship. So evolution sharpened human attention specifically to that. And here's where it gets almost poetic. Studies show that when a baby is born, both maternal relatives and paternal relatives tend to say the child looks like the father, even when the resemblance is ambiguous. Maternal relatives say it. Paternal relatives say it. Everyone says it. Because that declaration does real social work. It binds the father to the child. It signals paternity to the community. It encourages investment. Whether the child actually looks like the father is almost beside the point. The announcement of resemblance is itself the technology. Not every society tried to pin paternity on one man. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences analyzed 128 indigenous South American societies and found that up to 70% of Amazonian cultures believed in partible paternity. The idea that a child could have multiple biological fathers. In these cultures, if the mother had sexual relations with multiple men, people believed that each of the men was, in part, the child's biological father, said anthropologist Robert Walker of the University of Missouri. And remarkably, this system worked. Children with multiple recognized fathers had better survival outcomes, because multiple men were contributing food, protection, and resources. The biological assumption was wrong, but the social outcome was right. Among the Ache people of eastern Paraguay specifically, having multiple fathers appeared to protect children from violence, the leading cause of child mortality in that environment. Paternity uncertainty didn't have to be resolved. It could be distributed. In a mobile hunter-gatherer band with communal resource sharing, paternity uncertainty was manageable. Resources were shared. Children were somewhat collectively raised. Nobody was going to inherit a kingdom based on whose son they were. But then farming happened. Once you have agriculture, you have property. Once you have property, you have inheritance. And once you have inheritance, everything riding on paternity certainty becomes enormous. Who gets the farm? Who inherits the cattle? Who becomes the next chief? Suddenly the old flexible ambiguity became completely intolerable. And so every agricultural civilization in history independently built the same solution: control of female sexuality. Virginity before marriage. Fidelity after it. Legal penalties for adultery. The Code of Hammurabi, dating to 1754 BC, treated it as a capital offense. The word for legitimate son in ancient Greek, nesios, carried so much weight it determined property rights and citizenship. Family names passed through the male line. Hereditary monarchy. Clan systems. All of it. Convergent solutions across unconnected civilizations to the same fundamental problem. Mothers always know. Fathers never could. And then in 1984, everything changed. DNA paternity testing gave humanity, for the first time in its entire history, an actual biological answer. Not a social answer. Not a legal presumption. Not a resemblance-based guess. A real answer. And what the data revealed when it was applied broadly. Estimates suggest non-paternity rates. Cases where the social father is not the biological father cluster around 1 to 3% in modern Western populations. Which sounds small. Until you realize that's millions of people living in family structures built on a misunderstanding about a fundamental biological fact. The science changed in 1984. But somewhere deep inside your brain is still an ancient human, sitting by a fire, staring at a newborn baby, searching its face for a familiar nose, a familiar smile. Asking the one question humans spent 300,000 years trying to answer. Is this child really mine?